I wanted to provide the board and certainly the community with an update on our facilities planning, and I'll be doing this, if not at every meeting, then certainly every other meeting, to just ensure that everyone has the common understanding of where the steering committee of the board has taken their discussions, where our architects and construction managers have advised us, and be presenting the community with the most updated plans as possible. There is a website for our facilities planning. It includes all of the information, an FAQ. It includes a survey that we conducted, the results of that survey, and all kinds of other important information that can just frame a better understanding of what we're considering. I shared this slide previously. We looked at programmatic needs, student needs, and that determines the capacity of our school. It's not just about square footage, it's about programs that are in our schools as well. And once you take the capacity of the schools and you look at the projected enrollment, there is a lot of development happening in town. It's something that we're keenly aware of, and we're keenly aware of the potential impact that will be had on our school enrollment. We have been informed by the developers that it's anticipated that for every 10 units developed, 1 child will result. We had our own study conducted. We commissioned our own study just to better understand what the enrollment implications would be, and it was more than that. It was more than 1 child per 10 units, but it wasn't in the order of hundreds. So we will see an enrollment increase. This is not just about projected enrollment, it's about student needs, programs that we're hoping to offer, and when those factors converge, we have a need to expand capacity. We've already taken so many steps. French Hill, reopen French Hill, that's come up. That's been a conversation that has kind of shined through the survey responses, through some of the inquiries I've received. And irrespective of the construction costs to renovate French Hill, the one big piece, and anyone who is in a school knows that if we're going to reopen a school, it's not so much the construction costs, because those are actually comparable. The construction costs and the renovation costs, new construction versus renovation, are actually comparable. However, with French Hill, there's a principal, an assistant principal, office staff, a nurse, an SRO, security personnel outside and inside, a psychologist, social worker, office technicians to help with the technology. The bus run is another $500,000 that we'd have to account for. The annual recurring costs of reopening French Hill approach $3 million annually. And that's a recurring cost that we'll have to absorb within our budget cycle after budget cycle. And with a keen sensitivity to taxpayers, if we propose modest additions to each of the schools, we don't really see those recurring costs. Maybe you're hiring a cleaner to clean the new wing of the building, but it's nowhere near the $3 million price tag that would recur each year should we reopen French Hill. So that's a big part of the calculus here, is being sensitive to the taxpayer to not add those recurring costs to our budget. So where we have landed ultimately is small additions to each of our elementary schools. And what I'd like to do is just go through an aerial shot of each of the buildings to just give the community a better perspective on where the proposed additions would go and the scope of the project. All with, and just like we made the addition of pre-K relatively budget neutral. Certainly from year to year it's budget neutral. There are some upfront costs that you have to invest to ready the facility, but they were modest, very modest. They didn't move the needle on our budget. Similarly here, we'd like any construction or capital project that we propose to be tax neutral to our community and to not have any substantial impact to the tax rate. So I'll share with you the first image is at Brookside. There are 2 modest additions, one to the top left, one to the top right of the building. In all, there are approximately 6 classrooms that we're looking to add. We believe that there's an aidability factor that makes 6 the right number. There's an enrollment projection that makes 6 the right number, and the capacity needs point to 6 classrooms being the right number. We don't want to overbuild and we don't want to underbuild. We believe 6 is right within the number that we need to be. The next diagram is of Mohansick School. That's an aerial shot of Mohansick. You'll see the top left of the building is a 6-classroom, 2-story addition to Mohansick. Brookside's 1-story. It would be a 1-story addition. Mohansick, on that side of the building, it's 2 stories, so this would be a 2-story addition. It does encroach on the playground a bit, and we're cognizant of that. And we'll certainly make sure that that area is intact once the construction is done in the aggregate square footage. This is Crampon School. In the bottom left corner of the screen, you'll see a modest addition of 6 classrooms proposed at Crampon as well. And again, at each of the elementary schools, I just want to note right now, and you saw this in the presentation that Mamasi Architects gave last school year in the spring, there are services being delivered in hallways. And we have to be able to do better than that. And it's not for a lack of creativity or resourcefulness. We have turned every square inch of space, usable space, into whether it's a small group instruction space or whether it's a storage space. We have literally turned over every square foot of space within each of the elementary schools. At the middle school, there are classrooms that you'll see at the top of the screen that have purple going along the perimeter. Those classrooms, the middle school has not been refreshed in quite some time. The interior classrooms have not been refreshed in quite some time, and they need it. And they show that they haven't been refreshed in quite some time, whether it's broken cabinetry, door hardware that gets stuck, lights that are not the best environment for learning. So we're looking at replacing doors and hardware where everything would be ADA compliant with the doors and hardware, ceilings, LED lighting, flooring, cabinetry, and paint. We're looking at also refreshing this space, this cafeteria. 800 children plus come through this space. And is there more that can be done to make it more inviting for middle school children? We're looking at the music wings. Music is so important in a child's life. And can we better structure and can we better accommodate the chorus, band, and orchestra programs through acoustical panels, better storage of the new instruments that we're investing in with this year's budget, and so on. We're looking at our Home and Careers program. We have a great kitchen classroom there, but it was designed 60 years ago. So can we modernize that space with working cabinetry and working appliances? At the high school, we're looking at the music wing again. We're looking at and at the middle school, pardon me, art classrooms as well, and updating the art classrooms. At the high school, we're looking again, band, orchestra, chorus classrooms, practice rooms for each of those groups. We're looking at art classrooms, and we're looking at our science research space. Currently, the science research space is a bit undersized for the volume of the program, so we're looking for easier access for our students in the science research program and a space that's a little more conducive to the student population enrollment. In addition, we're looking at a turf field. So earlier I spoke outside of the scope of the bond. We're looking at replacing the carpet on the original turf field to the left, and we're looking at adding a turf field space. And the turf field is so much more than an athletic space. Currently, and this is something that parents have brought to my attention, at the middle school, if it rains, it's difficult to take the children outside because the grassy area where recess is held becomes muddy. Children slip, fall, become dirty, and it's not really conducive to a productive remainder of the day. So this turf field will also serve as a recess space for our middle school students. In addition, having 2 turf fields, and this is what resonated with me most. Right now we have practices going on until 8, 10 o'clock at night. They're quite late. We want to get our students home. They can do homework, they can study a little earlier. We believe that having another field can end those athletic practices a little earlier in the day so that rather than having an 8 to 10 p.m. practice, we can conclude activities far earlier in the afternoon or late afternoon, early evening hours. That field does not drain so well, and we will certainly work with that and work with our environmental engineers to ensure that all protocols are followed and that everything is done with respect to the surrounding environment. And of course, we need SCD approval, and we go through a whole process for the development of the turf fields. So that's one area that we're looking at. It opens the door to other discussions that we may or may not have, but we're certainly looking at an additional turf field. It would be a baseball field combined with a girls' field hockey field. And although it's going to be marked as a field hockey field, there's nothing that prohibits a soccer team, a lacrosse team, or a football team for using that field for practices. So this way, simultaneously, we can have practices on the turf going. And we're also looking at a safer infill for the fields. It's something that we're cognizant of, and more to come on that. Just some additional items. We're looking at site lighting. It's 8:09, so it's dark out, and we have students who are on the campus practicing until 8 or 10, hopefully not for much longer. But we have students who participate in performances and shows, who are practicing in the band or with a musical, and they're here late. And we want to make sure that the lighting on our campus, which would be in an LED form, would provide for safe passage. And then some security hardening. And that's an area that I'm not able to go into too much depth on, but there are some very important strategic investments that we're going to make in the hardening of our facility to just continue with our safety efforts. And it's something that we're not able to do outside of the scope of a bond because it's cost prohibitive, but it's necessary for us to do. So those are the additional items. We have some next steps, and these were the same next steps that I presented at the last presentation. We're going to continue to work with the architects. The steering committee of the board is meeting every other Tuesday, and that's something that we found to be productive and a schedule that we need to maintain. We are looking to have a design to the community later in the fall or middle of fall. We're looking to maintain a tax-neutral proposal to the community. And I'll just jump down. The vote we would anticipate would be Q1 of 2024. However, no firm date has been set at this point. We're still waiting on the design, and once we have a design solidified, we'll certainly present that to the community and determine a date at that point. The board would determine a date at that point. Happy to take any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you. Can I do two clarifications before I
Please.
open up for questions? One of the things is baseball, we looked at the turf because one of the problems is that drainage is so awful, baseball can't even play on their field. They're normally playing off-site at one of the town fields. Is that correct?
That is accurate. Our baseball team has played only a handful of games on their home field because the condition of the field. And it's by no fault of ours or by no circumstances that our operations and maintenance department can't contend with, but coming off of a winter when snow has now melted on that field, and then the rain from the spring makes it a little more, exacerbates the problem, makes it a little more difficult for us to get on that field.
And then also, we keep talking tax neutral. Can you explain what tax neutral is and how we are going to achieve or get close to that? So, I mean, I think the community should understand what that means and how we get there.
So Lisa, I'll turn to you to explain the tax neutral piece and to speak to how we're going to maintain that, and then I'll just fill in.
So the district over the next few years has some significant debt expiring on our books, which means we've come to the end of some notes on previous projects. And so that we call that debt falling off. And what we want to do is replace that debt with the debt for these new projects so that the debt level for the district remains constant and thereby not increasing the tax rate impact to the district. And that is also made up of two parts. It's not only just our debt level, but it also then becomes offset by the state building aid that we receive from the state. So when you combine those two numbers together, it should match comparably to where we are now, again, to keep the net impact to the district at the same level.
But when we say tax neutral, that we're only talking our debt part of it. We are not talking our operational budget. It's two
Correct.
different pieces.
It means that the district will not incur additional tax burden because of this specific project. It does not mean any other programs or services that the district may encounter.
Okay, I just wanted to be very
Yes.
clear because we say tax neutral, and I don't know if everybody understands quite what that entails. All right, thank you. All right, questions? Lisa?
No, I don't have any questions. I look forward to hearing more information as we get closer.
Cheryl?
Yes, I have a question. Assuming that the bond goes through in the first quarter of 2024, when would the work begin, and more importantly, how long would the work take, and when would we be done with all of the projects that we've been looking into?
So once we determine a scope, we'll be able to provide the community with a better timeline. We would anticipate that some of the work would start in the 24-25 school year, and that work would carry into 26, hopefully not into 27, but there's the potential that happens too. But we haven't set a definitive timeline. Once we do first establish scope, we'll certainly come out with a time frame so that all of the work is attached to specific deadlines and timelines that we have. And I anticipate that will happen at some point later this fall.
Great, thank you.
We also have to be careful, once we get a bond is approved, we have things that sometimes fall out of our control. After the design phase, it goes up to SED. We have no control over how long SED could take. It could take weeks, it could take months, it could take a year. So it kind of falls out of our hands. We've been there before.
Thanks.
Rashmi?
I have no questions.
Mike?
You stole mine.
Sorry. Catalina?
I have a couple. One,
Wait, can you talk into the microphone?
looking at the design field with the new turf, was there ever any discussion about adding a permanent bathroom structure? Right now, we have porta potties, and then we also use the high school locker rooms up the hill.
So that's a great question with regard to bathrooms. So there's an immediate problem with bathrooms, and then there's a longer term, what are we doing about it longer term? So for the immediate piece, right now, for anyone who's been to a high school football game on our campus, there are anywhere between 2,000 and 3,000 people and 3 portable bathrooms. So for this week, we're adding 5 more restrooms. We'll have a total of 8 on the campus for the immediate short term, because a bond's not going to solve the remaining season that we have or any of the other community events that we hold here where there are only 3 restrooms. Longer term, we have had the conversation as a steering committee with regard to bathrooms, and can we add a structure? Where would that go? How many stalls? What are the sizes of those stalls? So that conversation's ongoing. One of the things that we are discussing is, okay, here are the needs that we have as a school district. We need to add on because we need capacity at Mohansick, Brookside, and Crom Pond. We absolutely need to make some of the critical infrastructure upgrades to our middle school and some of the upgrades to the high school. And then there's, okay, well, what else can we do? And that second list, so we're looking at bathrooms on the second list. We're looking at some of the other projects on a second list. But those conversations are still ongoing. Great question, something that certainly has come up, and I'm guessing will continue to come up in the steering committee meetings.
Thank you. And my second question is, adding the second turf field, would that open up the conversation to bring back modified sports? I know a lot of community members have been asking me and the board about how can we bring back modified sports in any capacity.
Sure. So the field situation is one part of the conversation. And then it becomes the annual recurring budgetary piece, and can we fit that in? Do we phase it in? Is it philosophically even something that we subscribe to as a school district? And one of the things that we may want to do is I can invite Mr. Barrett, our athletic director, back, and we can speak through freshman sports and modified sports, and we can even do that in October at the next presentation, which I don't believe will be at this coming meeting, but the meeting after that. We can certainly have a discussion on modified sports, the efficacy of modified sports. There are some good things and there are some bad things about modified sports. It's not all great. So I can have, and I will have Rob speak to that, and Rob is intimately involved both in the high school program and with our youth programs. So we can certainly present on that. The field does certainly help by giving more usable space because we don't have enough usable space at this point. So that will help, but then there are the other components that we'll look at.
Okay. I was just looking because the field hockey, that's something that our youth program, YAC,
Doesn't
does not
offer.
does
Sure.
not offer. So our students have to go
Sure.
to Lakeland or other districts for that.
Pete?
I have two questions. So the presentation, all the work in there would all be accomplished through a bond, correct?
Correct. The work that was presented, the only exception to that is on the fields, the Charlie Murphy turf field, the current turf field, the replacement of what they call the carpet, the turf portion, and the resurfacing of the track would be done through a capital fund, not through the bond.
Okay. And then just, you had talked about with the extra classrooms, there's roughly 18 classrooms,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And is that exactly what we need to meet the enrollment needs today, or are we projecting or planning for the future?
We're projecting out 10 years. The one factor or the two factors that we can't predict are the student needs coming into our school district. We can count numbers, but there's a difference between counting numbers and then understanding what the needs are. So as we have our capacity for 812 classrooms, we're taking full-size classrooms offline for a smaller number of students, which is terrific. It's just something that is difficult to plan for 10 years out or even 5 years out, so that unless the children are already into the school system and you could account. But the other part, and this leads into the other component, is as new construction happens in town, yes, there's actually a long-standing metric used. It's called the Rutgers University model to project enrollment based on construction. And that's a model from over 40 years ago that's used. As people are buying those homes, if they wish to stay in the community, live in the community, and downsize, who's backfilling the homes? And from my experience in conversations with real estate professionals in the community, it's generally families with children of school age. And that's a number that's very difficult to project. So based on the numbers that we have now, yes, and the information we have now, yes, we are building. Any more wouldn't be aidable by the state. Any less would be insufficient to meet what we anticipate the demands would be.
So the day that those classrooms are finished, all 18 will not be full.
They shouldn't all be full right away.
So,
They'll be used, they'll be utilized, and what we'll do is we can separate where maybe teachers are sharing a room, we can separate the services so that they have their own room, but they will be available for a classroom at some point.
and will the teachers that staff those classrooms be existing teachers, or does that become additional recurring costs?
And-
Because we have to increase the staff.
So it's a hybrid answer to that. Right now, if somebody's delivering a service in a hallway, we're going to take them out of a hallway and put them into a room. We do anticipate some needs coming up and some programmatic needs coming up. That would require new staffing. So the answer to that is it's going to be a combination of the two.
Thank you.
Mike?
Well, just a quick comment to that, Pete. So having gone through some of the steering committee meetings, that there was a piece that I learned this year that the state education department has a formula that they use to determine how many classrooms you should have by your enrollment. And we're limited in how far we can expand, because if we go beyond their formula, we don't get state reimbursement for the building of those classrooms. So there's a balancing act between, we'd love to be able to build as many as we could, but they won't aid them. So we're trying to make sure we come in right at the max.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
And the aid's
in
about
some,
50 cents on every dollar.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
correct? It's
And
close to
it's
60
significant.
cents,
and in
actually.
some cases, we're having to be mind readers because we're trying to react to things going on in town that we don't know. And we don't know what's coming down the pike, and we don't know what's already in the pike and how that's going to reflect on us because it's still up in the air. So you're trying to predict the future. It's hard.
And we've done our due diligence. We've commissioned a study of enrollment. We've commissioned a capacity study. So we've certainly done our due diligence, but there are some variables with regard to student needs and with regard to who's backfilling homes that are vacated within the community over the next 5 or 10 years.
But when you look at it, in my mind, it's very fiscally responsible how we've gotten to this point right now. When we looked at all the different scenarios, it makes the most sense.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
you.